So this is the Kudila television channel being broadcast on the internet, not on satellite, not on terrestrial, not on cable platforms. This is the Kudila television channel being broadcast on the internet on Saturday, the 4th of July, January 2025. 4th of January 2025. This edition contains a look at one item in the magazine, the Times magazine of Saturday, the 4th of January 2025. And this magazine cover exhibits two narcissists. One is called the Santam Sangera, an existing Times writer. And Fraser Nelson. How to describe Fraser Nelson? Fraser Nelson is the personification. Fraser Nelson is the personification of everything artificial, superficial, corrupt, unoriginal, facetious, ignorant, dishonest, evil, selfish, corrupt. Now, the narcissistic piece that appears in the magazine, pages 42 and 43, is the one that announces his return to the Rupert Murdoch-controlled Times newspaper. As a columnist, the last paragraph of that narcissistic piece reads, and I'm looking for the appropriate way to be able to look at the magazine and read the last paragraph. Now and again, I'm asked if I've been tempted to follow other Spectator alumni. What a grand word. Nigel Lawson, Boris, Kemi. Now that last one, Kemi, has never been associated with the Spectator, let alone being an alumni. So I'll read that again. Now and again, I'm asked if I've been tempted to follow other Spectator alumni, within brackets, Nigel Lawson, and then its first name terms, Boris, Kenny, into politics. But my ambitions have always been in the other direction. After being an editor, I always wanted to return to writing. If it wasn't writing that he was doing as editor, what on earth was he doing? I've always seen it, that is writing, as the pinnacle, the best job in journalism. What other jobs are there in journalism if it isn't writing? And I can think of no greater honor than being a columnist for this newspaper, the Rupert Murdoch Times. It's great to be back. Now, as I said, he's a personification of evil, corrupt, cruel, selfish, ignorant, satanic, dystopic. He says that when he took over, that's the paragraph, the penultimate paragraph, which says, The Spectator was valued at £20 million when I became editor. Now look at the swift transformation in money terms that he is obviously claiming he made. The Spectator was valued at £20 million when I became editor and sold for 100 million a few months ago. For a tiny magazine with 3 dozen journalists, exclamation mark. I toyed with my own management buyout, but struggled to persuade investors of my theory of publication valuations, which I had learned when covering the Gucci LBMH takeover war. B equals PM plus H. The magazine's value is a standard multiple of its profits plus a halo premium, which can be really quite huge depending on how desirable the publication is. Now, obviously, to do a review of the Spectator, which I have evidential factually had to endure the task of examining for nearly 60 years, which is many more years than President Nelson has been alive. Now, this will take longer, so I'm not going to start an item by item analysis of the Spectator. Suffice to say that the Spectator, which has been associated with Andrew Brilopad Neal and other Scots individual like Fraser Nelson, the Spectator has been, along with the Daily Telegraph, Borisgraph, Torygraph, one of the main sources of evil, corruption, lying, racism, sexism, etc., etc. So, what is happening now with the valuation from £20 million to 100 million, for which it has been sold, as claimed by Fraser Nelson in this piece? What was the attraction? What was the actual desirability of the Spectator? And who would have desired it? The piece also contains his recent television program, documentary, which he calls Sick Benefit or Sickness Benefit or Sickness Culture in the United Kingdom. Now he, Fraser Nelson that is part of the problem, part of the main problem of persistently festering, degenerating culture, the narrative agenda for keeping the country, the society divided, unequal, and fundamentally open to and available to unaccountable criminals who are also called billionaires and millionaires, etc., etc. So his previous stint at the Times, his previous career started in the 1990s, and then he left the Times, and of course, for the last 15 years, as he says, he has been editing The Spectator. In that time, The Spectator has been part of the corrupt narrative, the fascistic narrative, the racist narrative that has benefited the conservatives, has created Brexit, has created and fostered Nigel Nasty Farage, and as within now, it's now less than 2 weeks to go before Donald Trump returns to the White House. What is going to happen? There is going to be phenomenal upsurge in extreme far-right fascistic, racist, jihadist, anti-Muslim, crusader, crusader, crusader as defined by Richard Nixon, because his re-election campaign, which created the Watergate spying episode, was compared and comparable to the crusade, jihad. So a new crusade, new jihad, new edition of the jihad and crusade is going to be unleashed across the world before it becomes exposed and is busted for at least another 100 years. That is what I predict. What will happen is that initially, all the criminals that are now gathering to brag and boast of the return to the White House of Donald Trump, they're going to exceed their own limits in deriding, in berating, in condemning what they perceive to be the so-called left, the socialist. The truth is that there is no socialism anywhere in the world. Absolutely not. Except in the minds of the criminals, racist, anti-Muslim, evil ones that want to use socialism and socialist as tags, as flags to keep the Little Englanders in the context of the British media, Little Englanders brainwashed in their place of ignorance, complete ignorance and darkness. Looking at the article, they said the highlighted, two highlighted pieces are there. The one is, he said, they called me sweaty sock, slang for jock. It may count as a hate crime now. Now, when he says that it may count as a hate crime, what he is doing, he is becoming an woke. Now, the very thing that he and Andrew Brilopad, Neil, and others of their corrupt ilk have derided. But when it suits them, they become woke without any hesitation whatsoever. They said that the word jock would be, or the sweaty sock would become count as a hate crime now. And then he uses the first name term about Kemi Badenoch. Kemi is in public who she is in private, perhaps enjoying combat a bit too much. Now, Kemi and Kemi Badenoch has joined now Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Tommy Robinson in a gang demanding that the so-called grooming gangs, mainly identified as being located active in the Yorkshire, north of England, those gangs should be investigated. Now let's take a pause here. The gangs have been active in accessible, according to the accessible parts of the media that has actually published reports on the activities of the gangs over the last 30 years, in my understanding. But the actual ferociousness, the ferocity of the venomous anti-Muslim use anti-Muslim use or abuse of the gangs began about the time, let's say, shortly after the arrival back in power of the conservatives in 2010. So from 2010 up to now, up to let's say 2024, up to the 4th of July 2024 election, the people who have been in government have been the conservatives. So 1.5 decade of power. And Kevin Badenoch has never made any mark, never featured in any call that I can remember about the need to investigate the grooming gangs, nor has any of the others. Boris Johnson, a notorious anti-Muslim hater. Theresa May, the woman who created the hostile environment against the Jamaican people, the Caribbean people, nor Liz Truss. And they are now out of power, and now they have suddenly discovered that the grooming gangs need to be investigated. The investigations have taken place, and all the objective evidence or objectively collected evidence point to a complete complicity of evil and collusion among all the main careerists, the councillors, the members of parliament, the political parties, conservative, labor, liberal, all of them have been complicit with the criminality of the gangs, targeting and exploiting, raping on an industrial scale, mainly white girls across the north of England. In the main, none of the newspapers, none of the media, mainstream media, has actually done anything to focus attention on this criminality on industrial scale. Now back to the narcissist. Now, moving a bit away from Fraser Nelson and onto the book reviews in the Saturday reviews in the Times supplement. So Richard Price's latest hard-boiled saga has wit, wisdom, and something brilliant on every page. Why isn't he more respected by John Self? Now, what is the quality that this Richard Price is being given credit for? Why isn't Richard Price acknowledged as a great American novelist? Maybe it's because his social panoramas are inner city and working class. often with plots that mean he is categorized as a crime novelist. I hate it, he said, of this pigeonholing. Is Cormac McCarthy a Western novelist? Maybe it's because he is better known for his screenwriting as the Oscar nominated writer of Martin Scorsese's The Color of Money, or his work on the television series The Wire. I can't afford to write two novels in a row, he said. Movie writing pays the bills. We should wake up to his brilliance. His novels, Clockers 1992 and Lush Life 2008, are among the best literary portraits of modern America. But it has been a decade since his previous novel, The Whites 2015, initially published under the pseudonym Harry Brand. Now Price is back in full blood with the aptly named Lazarus Man. The setting is the New York neighborhood of East Harlem in 2008, a mixed area where people can hear the steel scream of the subway trains from their apartments and where Price cycles his story between a cross section of the community. Everyone muddles along, just trying to get through life. The thing about time, one character says, is you got a little less of it than you did yesterday. The cast includes Felix Pearl, a young would-be filmmaker who developed an interest in the art after the unpromising business of recording his dying father's video message to his family. There is also Royal Davis, a funeral home owner, hustling for business. The last person he had buried was his accountant, and that was 2 weeks ago, and only because she received an employee's discount. At the center of the plot is the collapse of a tenement building, a soundtrack of car alarms, call outs, chatter, and the everywhere crunch of glass underfoot. Although Price puts it mostly off camera, instead showing us the effect on his characters. Davies, for example, is taking a nap in one of his burial caskets when the sudden tremendous window rattling boom made the wood of his coffin sing. One key player, Mary Rowe, is a detective trying to trace a man who goes missing in the collapse, and the Lazarus man of the title is Anthony Carter, who is rescued from the collapsed building after being buried there for days. Anthony is mixed race, presenting as either black or white. Both were true, both were false. And after his rescue, his resurrection, he is hailed as a local hero, called on to deliver inspirational messages and eulogies at funerals. Stranger still, he finds himself believing the hokey cliches he parades out at these events. Whatever befalls you, no matter how heartbreaking or onerous, will turn out to be the best thing, the perfect thing, because of what is come out of it. And others slap them up too. Is his story too good to be true? Does the truth even matter anymore? Lazarus Man is all about the details, and every page has something brilliant on it. Price captures people vividly and plainly, from the gigantic neighborhood simpleton to a cashier with a shock mottled face and death gripped water bottle after a robbery. The dialogue is as punchy as you would expect from an old hand at television. My wife would say, God is looking out for you. One man tells Anthony. I, however, would say that if he was looking out for you, he never would have let a building fall on top of you. To begin with, all books are made up of a million tiny moments, and Lazarus Man takes it to extremes. The short scenes and wide range of characters mean events move quickly, and the reader has to pay close attention not to be left behind. Price's seductive language, the way its rhythm and style pull you along, can make you believe you don't need to stop and think to keep up, keep up. You do. There are surprises and turning points all the way to the end. For newcomers to Price, Clockers or Lush Life may be a better entry point. But if you stick with Lazarus Man and allow the characters to settle, you'll find more warmth, cynicism, and love of life, every kind of life, here than in many novels twice the size. Going back to the tenement, the word tenement, because apparently John Cleese called Fraser Nelson a half educated tenement Scot. For 15 years, Fraser Nelson was the editor of The Spectator, mixing with celebrities and politicians in a job that opened every door in London. His insider credentials have made him one of the most sought after pundits on radio and television. As he joins the Times, he reveals what it's like to be on the front line of British politics. No, he doesn't.